So Gennady Golovkin versus Saul Canelo Alvarez wound up ending in a draw. The fight for Golovkin's IBF, WBA, and WBC titles, and for Saul Alvarez's Ring Magazine and effectively Lineal middleweight championships. And it was a good fight. It was a good fight between the two of them. Personally, I scored it 116 to 112 for Golovkin. Had it 8 rounds to 4 basically. And I can see certain scorecards going a little bit closer, maybe even bordering on the ones that give Alvarez a win, maybe like a 115 to 113. But generally, this was really Golovkin's fight. I thought that he won it. I thought by the time he got into the third round, he got into a bit better of a rhythm. Whereas the first round, a couple of rounds, he started a little bit slow. He definitely started a little slow. Alvarez was looking snappy and quick as ever, and he was doing a good job of kind of sticking and moving and kind of forcing Golovkin to kind of give chase to him to follow him around basically. But once Golovkin managed to start cutting off the distance and cutting off the ring just a bit, he's not the greatest at cutting off the ring, but he's competent at it. Uh, he was giving Alvarez a lot of trouble. Canelo, it seemed like he was trying to land the flashier punches, whereas Golovkin was really putting punches together a lot better, I thought, in combination and just overall. And it wasn't even just a matter of like, oh, he's outworking Alvarez. He's outlanding him. I mean, he was outworking him and he was outlanding him. He was just landing more punches than Alvarez was landing on him. Alvarez, of course, did land some of the flashier shots. Uh, Basically, the way that I saw it, I gave the first 2 rounds to Alvarez, and I also gave him the 8th and the 12th. There was a couple of rounds in there that were kind of swing-ish rounds, but for the most part, I thought that that it was reasonably easy to score the fight. It seemed like each round, for the most part, had kind of a clear winner. And there's only like really maybe 3 rounds where I could really see them going the other way. Um, and this is where I think that argument that I really hate comes into play. The whole idea of like, oh, it's what you like. No, it's not what you fucking like. It's what you judge. It's what you objectively judge to be more effective. That's what it is. It's not what you fucking like. You know what I mean? Like, I like seeing motherfuckers get knocked out. But, if somebody's got big power and he can't score the knockout, well, obviously his power wasn't all that effective, was it? So there you go. It's what you judge as being effective. And for the most part, just the way that it looked, Golovkin tended to be a bit more effective than Canelo did. There were certain instances where Canelo landed some good shots and everything, but I just thought they were too few and far between. It was like he was trying to basically win rounds off of kind of the flash and the flare, and try to steal rounds basically by fighting in spurts, fighting in spots. Not unlike say like Adrian Broner, who is somebody that I've compared his style very, very much to in the past, albeit now Alvarez has kind of progressed and Broner has regressed. But I mean, that being said, just the way that I saw it, Golovkin, I thought controlled the tempo more often than not, kind of controlled the distance, fought the fight at his pace. Uh, for the most part, like if you just going beyond like kind of clean, effective punching and effective aggression, just look at the ring generalship of the matter. I thought Golovkin controlled it more often than Alvarez did. There were certain moments where Alvarez was able to kind of move as he pleased somewhat, but more often than not, he wound up kind of getting pinned on the ropes. And even as he was moving, he wasn't necessarily landing a tremendous amount of punches, as he was kind of trying to stick and move at the very least. There were moments when he stood his ground, where he'd stay in there for an extra beat or two, where he'd land really good shots, and then he would move out of the way. But too often, it's almost like he was taking a little bit too much off of his punches by just being extra skittish and trying to move before Golovkin could really set himself. Or otherwise, when he was on the ropes, there was frequently instances where he really wasn't doing very much, or the punches that he would throw, they were flashy shots, but they weren't either landing or landing cleanly. A lot of shots kind of to Golovkin's elbows or against the gloves or against the guard or what have you. Which I mean, you can theoretically do some damage cumulatively with shots like that, but overall it didn't seem like that was really the case in this fight. So the judges came through with their ridiculous ass scorecards as they tend to in Alvarez fights. I mean, the guy's gotten the benefit of all doubt in the past frequently. Against Lara, against Trout, against Mayweather, and even against the guy that I don't see people really like mentioning very often, possibly because it was a bit before Alvarez was as famous as he would become in those other fights. And also because of the opponent. But Alfonso Gomez, I thought Alfonso Gomez was beating him like 5 rounds to 1 before Alvarez finally caught him with a big shot, and then the referee jumped in very fast. That was a very early stoppage by far, considering how well Gomez was boxing the shit out of Alvarez, as he did a terrible Mayweather impression up against the ropes with a shoulder roll. But that's just the way that Canelo's fights seem to go. These judges are blinded by whatever it is that Alvarez is or who Alvarez is connected to are doing. So that's the type of scorecards you get when you fight this guy. You got to go, and then you really got to punish him in order to actually get the victory, to actually get the W, or overwhelmingly defeat him, or maybe even have a little bit of judge favor for yourself as well. But yeah, Golovkin really won this fight. Regardless of if it was a draw, and I'm sure because it was a draw, and because it seems like a lot of people watched it, a lot of people were really clamoring for this fight. There was a lot of buzz going into this fight, going in, this whole week. It seemed with a lot of the people that I know that are very casual fans, really interested in talking about this fight. I'm sure there's going to be a rematch and possibly even a third fight. I'm sure Cinco de Mayo next year, and then Mexican Independence Day weekend next year. This is going to be Golovkin, Canelo 2 and Canelo Golovkin 3. that's pretty much the way that I see it. It was a good fight, though. It was a good fight, solid fight. Albeit in a year of great fights, it doesn't quite measure up. I mean, it was solid, but it never quite exploded into like the all-out war of like a Barrera Morales or an Estrada Cuadras like we saw last week, or a Spence Brook or Klitschko Joshua. Some of the great fights that we've gotten a chance to see this year, and then with Barrera Morales, one of the great fights of yesteryear. With all this bullshit hype about Mexican style, well, Barrera Morales, man, with Vasquez Marquez. There you go. That's the real deal right there. This was Golovkin, I think, a faded version of himself, and maybe a slightly weight drained version of himself. To me, he's had to move up in weight for at least a year now. For at least a year, I think, and I think he really still does. So I wouldn't surprise me if Golovkin Alvarez 2 takes place for all the marbles. Like Canelo gets a shot at Billy Joe Saunders next. Which is no guarantee that he wins that fight. Saunders actually looked really good against William Monroe in a fight that I thought was going to be more difficult for him. And if they unify, if Golovkin happens to win that fight, I'm sure he will move up to 168. I think the way he looks, not even just age, possibly kind of wearing on him, but I think making the weight is something that might be taking a little something out of him. And it seems like he's been starting slower in his recent fights than he used to years back. So it kind of reminds me a bit of Hopkins as he kind of got towards the age where he wound up fighting Jermaine Taylor. Taylor beat him 2 times, but then he moved up and he was completely rejuvenated at light heavyweight, incidentally. Not even super middleweight, but light heavyweight. As for Alvarez, I mean, that gas tank is something. That gas tank is really something. I figured that middleweight, it might be a little bit better. But, I mean, this guy is a fucking poster boy for weight draining. Alvarez is. The guy is built like a freaking NFL linebacker. So, even making 160, regardless of how short he is and stocky he is, he's a big fucking guy. You know what I mean? That's why I always say that, height isn't the same thing as size. It's not. Otherwise, Celestino Caballero would be bigger, quote unquote, bigger than Mike Tyson. So, people need to stop it with that nonsense. Alvarez is a big fucking middleweight, just like he was a big light middleweight, just like he was a gigantic welterweight, or 104, whatever the fuck 149 pounds is. It's lightweight. It's a light middleweight, really. But Alvarez by the time it's all said and done, I'm sure he'll probably be a super middleweight as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see either of these guys. Maybe even they'll finish their trilogy or quadrilogy or however many fights they have against each other up at super middleweight. Funny enough, but yeah, Alvarez definitely has some things to work on. In a rematch, there's some things that he could improve upon, especially going to Golovkin's body a bit more. He did it a little bit here and there in spots, but I think he was a little bit hesitant for fear of kind of opening himself up to some of the headshots that Golovkin was throwing. I think Golovkin probably could go to the body a bit more as well, especially to really exacerbate those stamina issues that Alvarez has. Otherwise, the Golovkin, he really needs to start a bit faster, and who knows, maybe he will. Maybe he was a little bit tentative in the early rounds from Alvarez's kind of snap and pop, the kind of the explosiveness of him early on that tends to dissipate a bit as it gets into the middle rounds. Came back a little bit in the later rounds, but, very much in spurts. And then Alvarez, yeah, he needs to get that conditioning together, man. I don't know what he needs to do, but he needs to like go in training camp with Ann Wolf or some shit and get that conditioning together, man, because it's letting him down. It's been letting him down for years, but he hasn't necessarily had the opponents to properly, completely show it out, basically to expose it. But here it definitely let him down against Golovkin. As it somewhat did in the past, even against Mayweather, against even Cotto. The fact that he wasn't able to stop Cotto when smaller guys like Pacquiao and Margarito were able to. So there you go. That's my review of Golovkin versus Alvarez. Pretty fun fight, interesting fight to watch. I'm definitely interested in a rematch. I don't mind it. I'd still like to see Jacobs get another shot if he plans on continuing at middleweight. And then so you got Saunders out there. So who knows? Maybe Canelo versus Saunders, Golovkin, Jacobs too, and then the winners meet possibly. But I'm sure just the risk versus reward being kind of what it is. I'm sure Golovkin versus Alvarez 2 and 3 are not far off. I'm pretty certain that's what's going to wind up happening. But who knows? We'll see. All right. That's it for this one. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.